Ready, Chair.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Climate Protection Work Group for Tuesday, September 16th. I'll be your chair, Peter McKenna. We'll start with our land acknowledgement. On October 16th, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been the site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building, through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. So we do have some regrets for today's meeting. I think Peter Au, Danielle, Linda,
Steve.
and Steve. Looking at the agenda, I would accept the motion to approve the agenda circulated. Moved by Nate, seconded by Sue. All in favor? That's carried. And the minutes of September the 9th, which was just a week ago, just to note that this is a special additional meeting that we're holding here today, 1 week after September the 9th. So if you've had a chance, or we could defer these minutes until everyone's back. I think
that's kind of what I was thinking.
Give us a little bit more time to look at them. With that agenda in mind, if you have any disclosures of monetary interest, please declare them. And we'll move right along to 5.1, emission reduction target discussion. And is that where you'd like to start, Richard?
Yeah, that's where I would like to start.
Okay.
Mind you, this is a gigantic report with many, many pages. What I have done is on the 11 by 17, I had just sort of taken out a lot of the tables and put them together here just so that they're more at a glance. So this basically is just a baseline information, and it does the assessments. And then on the other side of that page, it just has a rough graph that shows you the midterm and long term. And it looks at 2030 and 2050, and it looks at the reductions compared to baseline from 2021. I know that in the report it talks about 2019, and that's only speaking to when the data was initially first calculated, and that was just sort of brought forward as like the proto baseline, and then the corrected is a baseline that we're working with now. But that's just for a little bit more background. So 2021, the corrected baseline just shows the work that the consultant had done to make improvements based on the 2019 data. So that's why he references to 2019. That's where that's from.
And there's no way for the people at home to see these graphs at this point. We don't have them.
No.
That's fine. Is there anything you want to talk about there on the 2021? And that's what you're referring to this at a glance, all the
right. Yeah, I was really just pointing out the fact that the work had been done, and that's sort of like what you'll be looking at mostly.
So that's our baseline.
Yeah. I know, for example, the consultant, they had included the forest/agricultural section just in terms of trying to understand the potential sequestration that would happen from the managed forests. It did not incorporate the wetlands. We can have that as a future consideration component.
Okay.
Because I think that's critical.
Is there any questions on that baseline, or is there anything you want to highlight? Obviously, on-road transportation, not surprisingly, is the biggest emitter, right?
Right. So if we're looking at the corporate side the community side of things,
okay,
just the community. One of the comments out of the report was that the biggest sectors that we would have to address at some point in terms of a long range would just be the transportation, because that's obviously one of the largest, as well as residential, which relates to the building sector. So if we're looking at the corporate, so the community side of things, those two sectors would be the one that the consultant has recommended that we focus on in terms of long range impacts. So those wouldn't be something that would be quickly seen on a sort of like reduction perspective, but it'd be something that would be better implemented with long range planning. So the better
So-
we,
Long range, you mean to 2050?
yes, yes.
Okay.
So as in to say that we won't be expecting any policies to see reductions immediately for the residential or the transportation sector. If we're looking at retrofitting,
Right, I disagree with that.
okay, that's fair.
Okay. Okay.
Is there a point right now, or you want to bring it up after?
No, I just want to make sure that there's opportunity to discuss.
Yes, the goals are here, so we can definitely go into them. But this is just what the consultant has said, so that's fair.
Right.
Your question?
On just this,
Well, just in general, I thought you were waiting for me to say something for your question to start.
well, what was your, I haven't even, I've glanced through it. I haven't had,
Okay.
we just got it yesterday, I think.
That's right. So did
Yeah.
I. Like we're all
Yeah.
assessing at the same time. So I know you may not have a ton of questions for me now, per se. At least we can still have a general conversation about it.
I don't know if this is a question or so much just a confusion question mark. For your chart here, sorry, this one, the pie graph, the Smith Falls Community GHG for energy source.
Right.
The electricity is at 29% there,
Hmm.
which makes it bigger than our emissions from natural gas or diesel. Is that right? Like our grid is 95 to 98% GHG free. Like that seems very high.
I suspect it's because we use a lot of electricity,
Yeah.
but that's, it's not, I don't have a absolute answer on that one.
And this is just for the electricity in terms of the energy consumption.
In the community, yes.
So okay, so on the chart on the lower left-hand side, the energy consumption for residential in joules is just under 500,000, and the GHGs in tons is just under 20,000. So that makes it. What would that be for math in my head?
Oh, trying to ask me to do math. on
Yeah, no, I can do it afterwards. That's
There was something I
Electricity is,
so that'd be 40,000 out of a million. So that's 4%. 40,000 is what percentage of a million?
Not for,
It can be less than that. But again,
which graph?
Sure. Sorry. So under residential here, the energy consumption in
Yeah.
joules is 500,000.
475,000.
Yeah.
So 5%.
It's 5% of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
5%.
as a joules to okay. No, I mean I'm sure you're right. It's just that's the only one that jumped out at me as strange. The rest of them look in line.
yeah, I can follow up the questions on the math to the consultant if we're not sure how the values are matching up.
Let me crunch it when I get home and see if I'm still confused before you waste our time. But yeah, I'll shoot you an email if it's still not crunching.
Okay.
and do you want us to flip it over and discuss the back one as well?
Back one? Yes, but not as of yet.
I'm very pleased you printed on both sides, by the way. Somebody printed on both sides.
Yeah, I tried. So what Sue was asking earlier is what the number is. Like, what is the number that we're going to go forward with?
the target
The target, exactly.
reductions, GHG
Yeah,
reductions,
that was
right?
sort of like the
This
big
is,
question.
GHGs for energy sources. This is the energy consumed.
Yeah.
The energy sources.
This one here.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers compared to the chart.
Is that it? The okay? That's I think it's just a mislabeled chart. That's the ratio of energy used, not the GHGs by energy source.
Ah,
I think you're right.
Yes, you look at the
Yeah.
GHGs by electricity are
You're right.
6%.
Yes, as a ratio, it would be 29% of the energy used. Did you catch that? Sean cracked the case there.
Yes, I heard
Yeah,
that. Yes,
okay.
I saw that. I'll make a note of it.
So change that chart.
Yeah, good
Sorry,
eye.
29%?
Would be the amount of energy we're consuming, 29% of the energy we're consuming is electricity.
Yeah, but
So
it's
we
not
just-
29% of the emissions.
Remove the words GHGs by,
Yeah.
or just GHGs.
Basically,
So
just
Smiths
basically
Falls
energy by
community
source.
By energy source.
Maybe take out that TO2. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I'm gonna go from the top to bottom. Gives us our corrected baseline. And one of the things that the report talks about was the fact that based on our proposed goals, we wouldn't necessarily be reducing significantly to meet our target goal of 30% from 2019 baseline. If you look at page 8, this is table 4.
Page 8,
Table 4.
table 4, yeah.
It talks about the target to be reached if you're looking at 2019 as baseline and 30% reduction. So it gives us that number as 61,050 for the emission. So that would be just sort of the benchmark for which the consultant has started. And based on his calculations, just based on our reductions, it wouldn't necessarily get us closer to our goal by 2030 and then one by 2050. They recommend that we would have to be more aggressive in our, I guess, reduction activities if we're looking at making significant headway.
So they're saying our target level for 2030 is approximately 2/3 of what the business as usual would be for 2030.
A third, but yeah,
Right?
a third. Based on 2030, yeah, so it'd be 31. So it'd be a third of our, I guess, our business as
Reduction
usual.
of a third.
Exactly, based on our projection for 2030. And if we carry that forward continuously,
So that's the 30%, all right.
But that's over the BAU of 2030. That's not our percent based on
Okay,
2021, right? Which is the number we need to get to.
yeah, because I think the consultant essentially, if you're looking at the year 2021 for the corrected business usual projection, you can
Yes.
still calculate the reduction that we target if you're looking at say 30% or 43 or what have you. At least you have something to jump off from.
Yep.
Now, mind you, I think what the consultant is saying that based on the goals that we have that reduce mitigation, the potential is only roughly 31,000, essentially. And a lot of it has to do with, I guess, how we pool our resources and what we start first. But essentially, that's what he's saying. Which makes
So
me
just to paraphrase, he's saying the math doesn't work. That like
bingo.
we can set any goal we want, but it's delusional if it's not based on. And according to them, what they're saying is plausible is 31,600.
Bingo.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
and
that's. what
I
he's saying.
mean, I think even that is an ambitious like honestly like I'm skeptical that even that's possible without significant funding, but it's definitely seems more rooted in reality than the 6105.
Right. So throughout the report, he talks about the community and corporate sides and what goals and how they would be reducing our, I guess, our baseline. So if we are going to, where's the next page? So if you go to page 25, it talks about the estimated corporate reductions compared to the baseline as a business as usual trajectory. So it talks about the different sectors in the corporate plan and where we would be needing to make adjustments and how that would be impacting our 2030 and versus 2050. No.
So, sorry.
Go ahead.
So what you're talking about now, it's talking about what you need to adjust in order to get closer to 31.6?
Yes, right. So the goals that we had discussed for the corporate side, he had assessed them and put a potential for how much it would be reduction for. So for example, for fleet and equipment, what did we say for fleet and equipment?
But these estimates are based on certain just assumptions
Of course.
of, well, here's something you could probably do that won't be too difficult, or maybe it's too difficult, but here's just the outcome of a certain reduction.
Bingo. That's right.
And there's no necessarily what strategies will be employed to get there.
No, the implementation, I guess, follows with the town in terms of corporate objectives. So we implemented ourselves.
More
So
than
if
our
we think this
control, sure.
action is going to be significant, then we employ it and we see if the reductions meet our estimations.
Broadly stated in those.
Yeah, I didn't get to.
It's okay. So the green,
Yeah,
the green.
no, that's why I was highlighting, alerting you to that.
So if so, for example, he talks about 13 goals, and what he means is that when you look at that, those two pieces of paper on the corporate side,
Yep.
the green ones are the ones that reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and the other ones are supporting or there would be adaptation. So while important, he didn't focus on the ones that are focusing on adaptation, only ones that reduce emissions.
Right.
Just
Yes.
for example, on the corporate side, so if you're looking at, say, the fleet and equipment sector, there was a conversation about electrifying our fleet, and it was about having EV charging stations.
Right.
So, for example, if that were to be something we do, they're estimating that if we electrify our fleet, for example, we would have a reduction of 1 to 5%. Right. So that's sort of the estimation. If this is our activity, this could be the potential reduction. So he did that for both sides, just to give an understanding of what our goals would do and where they would have the impact. And then he had a section where he prioritized ones that would be implemented based on resources and, I guess, general capacity. For example, if we're looking at electrifying our wastewater treatment facility, that'd be a one-time upgrade, and we would see the dividend throughout, but it'd just be one time. Versus if you're looking at uptake for a green bin program, it depends on participation and rollout. So those are the variables that affect how much reduction could be achieved. So while we may not have a concrete number as to what we would choose, this report essentially says that if we're looking at these goals, this is kind of what we could be expecting for reduction potential.
So on page 25, where you were.
Right, so this is the corporate one, for example, on page 25.
Yeah, so if today, what's our fleet and equipment represent today? From a proportion, percentage of our corporate emissions.
Page 22, fleet and equipment account for just under 10% of Smith Falls corporate emissions. Drawn mainly,
Just in the narrative.
yeah, drawn mainly from gasoline and
Okay.
diesel use.
Is there a chart? Sorry to interrupt. Is there a chart showing corporate? I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
You realize I didn't include that, my apologies.
Yeah, no, I'm,
Yeah, so for fleet, they account for under 10% of the
So
corporate
if
emissions.
corporate is, if our fleet today is 10%,
yeah,
We're looking at
a reduction, the 1 to 5%, I guess by 2030 would mean 10 to 50% of our fleet has been electrified.
Yes, and I think
And by 2050, it means that 80 to 90% of our fleet is electrified, essentially, right? Okay.
That starts to give you some idea of costs and
Yeah, and
goals and
and
plans
and impact.
and impact.
And buildings and facilities,
26%.
buildings and facilities are 26% of our corporate emissions.
Yeah.
What is 26%?
Buildings and facilities.
Buildings and facilities.
Thank you.
So for example, if we're looking, I guess, the,
I just
retrofits and scaling,
So,
to include.
so if we're going to get 25% reduction by 2050, we've had to convert every building all of our facilities to off greenhouse gas emitting.
Right, so we would have to complete a retrofit of municipal assets.
And that, so that would, so those two together would give us, well, I'll say 34%.
If we achieve it on the timeline, yes. I mean, for example, for municipal buildings, I know Town Hall got retrofit relatively recently. And the arena is going to be brand spanking new once that's done. I know the Heritage House is not retrofitted to my knowledge, so I know there's some buildings that could benefit from that, I guess, that initiative. So there's room essentially to retrofit buildings. Is what I'm saying.
So,
But if I just finish.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
So fleet and equipment and buildings and facilities represent 36%, combined represent 36% of our corporate emissions. That doesn't seem right. I thought those two combined would be 90% of our corporate emissions.
I keep coming back to the wastewater natural gas drawing thing. Like, is that, it's so huge,
Well,
right?
that should be part of our buildings and facilities,
Well,
right? So we're taking the energy we're consuming at those facilities as being part of our inventory of assets.
I confess I get confused, and I too have only skimmed this, and I haven't really seen that plant. Like, to me, it should be a big red flag, you know?
On its own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm not
Yes.
seeing it.
So I missed the last meeting. I apologize. Sorry, I had a random thought on this, but let me just touch on the drying plant because we were kind of partway down that, and then I lost the train there. But I originally had flagged that I thought because they were pelletizing the waste, that it wasn't the type of facility that uses the bacteria to break it down, which was the way that they were judging the emissions. And he followed up with the consultants who, I guess, inquired and confirmed that, in fact, I'm wrong, that it is one of the facilities that uses the bacterial digestion. So it is emitting all of the nitrous oxide that the other facilities do. But in addition to that, we then take the sludge at the end and pelletize it.
Yeah.
And that we're using a gas drying system to dewater it essentially. It's not clear to me that the gas used in the dewatering process is incorporated into this model at all. Because
agree
I
with you.
don't think it is, in fact, because the way that they modeled it is based on the nitrous oxide emissions from the regular way they do it. Our plant, the fact that we're pelletizing it to make fertilizer, I think is a separate number that could be added to it, that we could conceivably just switch to another dewatering system or something, you know.
The only place I see it is page 17. I think I see it, I'm not sure, but is in, you see water and wastewater, see baseline adjusted, 1,018, okay? This is, tons CO2 equivalent.
Mhm.
And that's where it's jumping out at me as if it is that facility, right? But I don't know.
I think it's the nitrous oxide from that. Like that's normally a big emitter though. Like using bacteria to break that stuff down is a big.
That's what they have. That's the step before, right?
Yeah.
And it's in the open fields there, basically right in front of the plant. But I don't know. And this we really need.
Let's look at the
clarity on
energy
this.
because the 2021 GHG emissions for water and wastewater is 1,018
Mhm.
on page 17, which is more than buildings and facilities and fleet and equipment and corporate solid waste all put together.
Thank you, Sean.
That's
I mean,
plausible.
it's 60% almost of total emissions, more than 60.
That's not unusual for that because nitrous oxide is 127 to 1 ratio with CO2. So every ton of nitrous oxide that facility produces counts as 127 tons of CO2 on this chart. So the rate, that's the thing. These minor GHGs punch way outside their weight.
So are they saying?
The report acknowledges that it accounts for more than 6% of corporate emissions.
Okay. And one of the questions is, does that include the drying?
That's we need real clarification, and I think we need the consultant to separate that plant out so we can see it
You want him to separate the plants out?
Yes,
Okay.
I think.
I think the dewatering from the rest. I think they did a real thorough job on modeling the GHGs from it, and they even added on that there's more because the regular system doesn't account for the GHGs actually in the plant. But like, so that part they did fine, but the part that I think she's right still outstanding is the process of dewatering it, which I think is using natural gas.
Break out the water.
It is using
Well, I
natural
think-
gas, yes.
I would assume we've supplied them with all of our energy bills.
Yes.
So I suspect it's probably part of that 1,000, but they can separate that.
I
They
know
can tell
that-
us how much is coming from nitrous oxide, how much is coming from the energy used in the facility, both electricity and natural gas, I would assume.
Okay. I know that when I was collecting the bills for wastewater, it was a matter of the hydro or energy bill. So there were only 2 bills essentially for that facility.
I remember we tried to get that data through that, and it wasn't there because it was just energy. It wasn't clear if it was electrical or natural gas.
Bingo, yes, that's what it was. So we had the bills and the receipts, but we didn't have a breakdown for, I guess, it was for the whole facility. We didn't know exactly where they're measuring it from.
Yeah.
So that was sort of why the flat values what you have as
Well,
opposed
the consultant is going to know, they have that information, so they know what our annual usage of natural gas is and what our annual electricity usage is.
Okay.
And if those combined is less than 1,018, the difference I assume would then be the nitrous oxide if they're even counting that.
Aligned, yeah.
We want to understand if
the
the big value that we have for the total is a combination of electricity or natural gas.
No, it's more than that.
It'd be nice to get a
You wanna
pie
know
chart. Of,
Explicitly, what that drying plant is consuming and producing.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? And it is, we know, is natural gas.
And,
Maybe it's electric trigger.
but it may be difficult to break that out because we only have 1 meter going in. It's heating
That's-
the building
Yeah.
and running the pelletizer. Now, the pelletizer may have a gauge on it. I suspect it probably does,
Yeah.
which would tell us probably how much we're using, but it takes staff to go in there and.
Well, the manufacturer of the pelletizer would tell you too, like if you're putting this much through this.
Right.
but the gross number, which would be the easiest to get, I think would be the most accurate. Like it would knowing how much was actually going to the pelletizer might tell us the opportunity potential. But in terms of what the actual emissions are, however much we're paying for gas at that building and however much we're paying for electrical, it is all the data you need to calculate the CO2e, right? So,
Yeah, no, we have the conversion.
So if we're going to this, back to the consultant to do that work, do we want him to separate out the water plant
Yes.
from the wastewater?
Yes.
So for the water plant from the wastewater, and you want to know what natural gas is being used by the drying process. Is
Yeah.
that
So in the wastewater facility, it's the total usage of natural gas.
Yep.
And can they break out the natural gas that's being used within the treatment process? So the pelletizer.
See, I'm going by just guesswork here, but I think when they installed that pelletizer 35 years or whatever it was,
Yes.
they thought, oh, this is the best thing because
Yeah.
it gets rid of our sludge and we can
Yep.
recycle this product. Not ever thinking about, but what does everybody else do who doesn't have a pelletizer? What if we just stopped doing that and treated the sludge some other way? And what's the impact? I don't know.
No, it was thought to be green at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
It might be something as simple as taking that sludge and rather than dewatering it, use it to fertilize the trees around town so that it's actually boosting the impact from the trees, removes all of the fuel and the dewatering. Like all of these products, they're dewatered and then rehydrated when they're used. And if we just skipped that step and disposed of it naturally, or you know what I mean? Like you could check a few boxes and make
Someone
up
had
some-
asked me like how the town takes care of the trees. I know they have their own process, but I don't know what they use to, I guess, water the trees or to add fertilizer. I don't know. I could ask.
Well, lots of municipalities do use biosolids on farmland and as cover on dumps and all sorts of
And
things.
yes, I mean, we
yeah,
basically
there
give the
are a
pellets
number
away
of
and
options.
they're utilized by farmers and agricultural industry to
Yep.
as fertilizer, right? So,
Not dried.
pardon?
Not dried.
Dried it, and just big, like 2 ton or
Yeah.
single 2 ton
Hoppers.
bags, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we're gonna do. Put it back in your truck and away you go.
one of the things to keep in mind with it, like they've modeled this in terms of where the opportunity is for reductions, and they're saying that there's a relative, that it's finite essentially, which makes sense. But the other end of that, the other side of that coin is the opportunity to try to do things like plant trees where you're capturing carbon, and it might be the case that you can only get a building so green. But if you plant enough trees in addition to that, then you can offset it because they're fungible. And in respect with the sewage thing, if you start taking fertilizer and taking trees that weren't getting fed and feeding them, you can anticipate at least a 10% increase in growth rate, which is a 10% increase in carbon sequestration. And you can model that in, right, into our projections where whatever we're expecting to make in terms of carbon sequestration from trees, increase that by 10%, plus remove the gases from the pelletizers.
So they incorporate that on page 15 in the natural heritage list. Sequestration additive to baseline requires multi-decade canopy growth. Okay, that's their means of addressing that issue of vegetation and that sort of thing. So anyway, and it is interesting that it's high, but it's over time. So
sorry, just circling back to a thing from earlier, with this chart, like looking at the green things and how it's been
Maybe we should have
sorted.
made it larger, but yeah. Go
No,
ahead.
I like it. It's logical, and it's a thoughtful way of breaking this down. By my read of it, like the things that were highlighted in green representing the opportunities to reduce GHG emissions, though that was not triaged by cost. There isn't a section where there was opportunities that were just too expensive. Like literally everything
Right, exactly.
that could be done is in green.
Right.
So we should think of green as an ideal state if money was no object. And in that universe where money is no object, they're saying the achievable goal is about half what we were talking about setting.
Exactly.
But we don't live in that world. We live in a world where money's really tight, and the things that they're describing in here are ferociously expensive to the point that they're not realistic. A lot of them. Some of them are. I'm not saying all of them, but like in terms of when the job of trying to set a realistic goal, it's not everything in green happens. It's some affordable things within that happens, right?
So what do you want us to do, Richard, with this?
Well, we'll focus not on the number right now, but if we're looking at the goals, for example, in terms of like what would have any merit for prioritization, because that was the other thing I'm looking at in terms of, I guess, what we would suggest. I don't know if we're looking at augmenting the goals with more suggestions or we're just focusing on the goals as is. That's one thing. We could go with the strategy of looking at only the things that have the highest potential for reduction and just prioritize those. And in terms of the reality for costing, that would be, I guess, a council decision.
So one of the goals that we set today was we were going to get this and make sure that we understood it and whether things we need to change.
Right,
And have
and
we
I have some
exhausted that now? Do you think that we've talked about some of the corrections or highlights or where to find things, and are we can, if those changes and those questions answered, this is still our Bible, so to speak, of the information. So we don't need to do any more with this other than this is our reference guide.
That's right. So if we want to say that the baseline could be tweaked to be more clear about where the wastewater and water emissions are, then that's something I would go back to the consultant with. So the other thing would just to see if the goals have any merit. I know the consultant has prepared this to say which goals have some reduction potential. So that's the only way we can assess merit, really. Do you want me to ask the consultant what number to, I guess, quote unquote, propose? Because this report does not give us a number to select. It just says how close we'd be getting if we were going to be looking at our reduction base with the 30% from say 2019 and net zero for 2030, that kind of thing. It only assesses the potential for reduction. It doesn't give us a number.
Well, that's what we need to go to council with,
I understand.
is a number. And for both the community and the corporate.
Right.
And council has to approve that, or, you know, approve something so that we can proceed, right? With the details of a plan and the implementation.
Right.
So, and we need to do that, I think, sooner than later in order to ensure that we get into the budget process, right? So I think we need the recommendations from Greenscale about what they might recommend in terms of target reductions. And as I've said before, I would expect that they would provide us with effectively 3 options, right? A weak one, a middle one, and an assertive one. So we need something.
Okay. We'll reach out to the consultant and get you back as soon as we can on that.
Yeah, well, just from what I've read, I've read the report. I haven't fully read every detailed report, but I've sort of summarized it fairly well. It's essentially telling us that major reductions aren't possible.
Are not possible? Is that what you said?
Right? I mean, it says like we can do this, this, and this, and we're still not going to be anywhere near where any number what we've even talked about, let alone any goal that we've set. Right? By 2050, if you look at from a corporate standpoint, and I'm so reading this as not being it's a reduction in the total emissions, not in that sector, correct? So as an example, if buildings are now 26, buildings facilities are now 26%, we can get to a 50 to 95% reduction in our emissions within buildings. Near term, it says it's very difficult, obviously. But I would think if we're doing that in the long term, we're making a significant difference. When it comes to fleet and equipment, if we are by 2050 getting an 8 or 9% reduction on a 10% number, are we taking that being an 80 to 90% reduction in our fleet? And I'm not sure I'm reading this right, because overall, when I go back to the summary, it's basically suggesting that that kind of a target isn't realistic. So am I reading this wrong?
I don't know, Sean, and I'm equally frustrated. But the other thing that I would add too is that I always find the projection to 2050 to be incredibly misleading, incredibly fictional, incredibly frustrating, because we have no idea what's going to happen in the next few years in terms of technology. I mean, the feds right now are talking about lifting the tariff on Chinese EVs. Mm-hmm. That's going to explode the EV market if that happens, right? I mean, I think the data I've seen is that something like 62% of people want to buy an EV. It's just the cost, right? So this is going to be transformative if that happens, you know? Who knows what's going to happen in the municipal sector, mm-hmm. right? In the next while. So the 2050 stuff, I'm totally frustrated by, you know?
If we electrified everything in the next 25 years.
Yep.
So it's like every single facility will have end-of-life assets that need to be replaced.
Yep.
And fortunately, there are incentives from the federal government to electrify at that time, and we change everything over in the next 25 years. And then at the same time, EVs as well as counting heavy equipment and all that we're going to need. But the next 25 years, all of that is done.
And add renewables.
And well, then that would be the other piece is, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
solar, hydroelectric is option. So that's why I guess it's maybe a little bit underwhelmed with the report, because I think it's, if we simply electrify everything and we added some renewables, how are we not there?
I can answer that.
Sorry, I know there's still fossil fuels built into the infrastructure of the whole system, right? But anyway,
So
aside from that,
you mean unless support the electrical grid?
everything, yeah.
So,
but
a couple of things. So, I mean, basically say like I agree 1,000% with what you're saying about the 2050 thing, and it's it's both completely unhelpful because it moves it into like the science fiction long future as opposed to like the job of actually trying to make a plan that gets you there. And I actually like the way that I understood this system to work, that it's a 5 and 10 year goal, because I think that is a much more manageable thing where you're planning for what happens next year, and there's like I think it makes a lot more sense to do that. And that's part of why I just misunderstood. I was under the impression that when council passes this, that clock starts. And so we would be making a plan for 5 years from now and 10 years from now. And instead we're starting like 5 years in, and we're making a plan for next year and 5 years after that, which you basically remove all this runway. And so the option, like what is possible, gets radically shrunk. And that I've been kind of trying to flag that when I look at these numbers, it's going to be an underwhelming report. I think I've said that a few times because that's just the reality of the way that we've structured this. We're talking about a very short runway and then a long time horizon. But beyond that, like the reason why municipalities like Toronto decided to switch gears and do a scope 3 analysis is because they looked at the scope 1, and it's a very narrow view of things that you don't have a whole lot of control over. And the part that you do have a lot more power over is the food and everything else. And that part of it, if you like, A is there anyways. Like, to answer your question of if we electrify everything, how are we not there? It's because that doesn't get you there. There's still like a lot of other emissions that are happening to support like the human infrastructure. And to actually look at all of that is the scope 3 analysis. And when you do that, it is possible to shrink your carbon footprint much more dramatically, but it means acknowledging a much larger number on the front end. So, yeah.
And we haven't talked about, you're reminding us, if we plant 3,000 trees in 5 years or something, like, we haven't even talked about that. Yeah.
Offsets as a potential is absent from here. And I think like the comment I've been making all along is that like we should score these. Like when everything highlighted there is a scenario that can reduce GHG emissions. What we need is a cost per ton of GHG through that. And you'll see some of those are much more expensive than others in terms of return on investment. And if we're choosing which ones we can actually do, it's going to be the ones where when you spend money, you get the highest possible reductions. And a lot of those are more in the scope 3 zone or in the planting trees and, that kind of thing.
This discussion also reminds me just how unpowerful, for lack of a better word, a small municipality is. Where federal policy and trade policy worldwide has more impact, or a large, with our resources, what we have. So it was bound to be modest anyways, but everybody has to do their part.
Sorry.
All right.
I have put together a PowerPoint. And I presented it recently to a small group of people, 20 people or so. And they are blown away by all of the climate activity now happening at the lower tiers and at the county, okay? And this is so critical, Peter, And it's like, I had a meeting today with North Grenville because they want to know what we're doing, right? So this is spreading like an infection, which is fabulous, right?
Yeah, it's important.
And it's critical. It's just critical. And yes, the federal and provincial actions can be in effect greater. And yes, I mean, if the feds get rid of tariffs on Chinese EVs, that is ginormous for sure. But man, oh man, the activity that's happening right now is just huge. And it's not to be poo-pooed. And the numbers may be smaller, but...
Yeah, I wasn't trying to poo-poo it or say it wasn't important. I'm just saying, as Nate has done, it really just going through this process, you just see how limited we are in that there are more limits, I think, at this scale.
I agree with what you're saying. I know, like, I know, and I hear what you're saying, that you want to push back on it, and you're both right. Like, it's one of the things that I've observed is that, like, on this issue, one of the only things that the right and the left seem to agree on is they both like the idea of it coming to local. Like, the left feels that, like, the most effective way of doing anything in the environmental space is on a local level, and there's lots of data supporting that. They're not wrong about that. The right tends to believe in local government over federal government, and there's a sense that they tend to gravitate towards, like, wherever you're going to do stuff in the environmental space, it should be done on a local level. And there's value in both of those things. It's also the case that just about everybody who's looked at the numbers says that we need system changes. It does, like, the things that you can do as an individual don't have very much return, and if we focus entirely on that, we can easily lose sight on the fact that, like, how we manage our national forest plays a larger impact on GHG emissions than all the other stuff that we're doing. And how, like, we deal with melting permafrost and the increased methane emissions from wetlands is a bigger, like, potential bomb for the climate change than all of this stuff. And questions like that, like, when you're looking at that, the idea that we're going to devote enormous resources when, money is really tight to trying to chip 5% off of this, just it's really difficult politically to sell, and it doesn't necessarily make sense. And so, like, it's a frustrating, like, what do we do, honestly? And I'm glad we're having the conversation and wrestling with it. It's like, there's a reason this isn't solved already.
System change is integrating this stuff at the local level. That's system change. And that's what we're doing, right? And when we look at this and we look at the community stuff, the two biggest things that we can be addressing are transportation first, and then buildings, housing second, okay? At the transportation level, Smiths Falls is the center of the auto buying sector in this area. We have every one of the auto retailers along here. I've talked to a couple of them. They are keen to have some sort of EV day, okay? We can do this. Like, let's do it. In terms of the housing stuff, the program we're running right now is bringing a half a dozen funding programs to people. A half a dozen. I mean, how many decades did I go through where there was only one funding program that would be a blip, here and then gone, and here and gone, and here and gone, and now there's a half a dozen? There's money there right now to do this stuff. We just need to get active and get it going in Smiths Falls. So,
no, you're right. It is for the town to even adopt a climate lens on all of our important decisions is a huge system change. Richard and Carl and I talked briefly about how do you get the staff to do it, and understand you have to change all work processes, and however, it's similar to adopting an asset management plan. There's a new way, there's a better way to do it. Get rid of the old ones.
We ultimately control our corporate emissions.
Right.
If it's all on if it's transportation and facilities and buildings and water and wastewater, it's really a dollar. It's an investment. Becomes the question: how much, how soon does the transition happen?
Well, you control corporate, but you hugely influence community.
So that's where we have to what's the plan to influence the community? So certainly EV chargers readily available and effective. Education of the public, I presume, potential incentives tacked on to federal provincial incentives if we wanted to encourage people to transition to heat pumps from natural gas or oil in some cases. I mean, that's all possible.
Yep.
So
the Tay Valley Township is paying for the cost of the audit prior to, these various housing programs. That's a very specific thing that township has decided it can contribute to, right? Because that can be a disincentive for people to actually pay for the
12 participants in Smiths Falls, the town can say, well, it's $500 or $300, whatever it is, something like that. They could say, for this pilot, we'll cover the costs of that. You're right. There's
and not even a pilot, on an ongoing basis.
The concierge program I was referring to. Yeah, that's not a pilot, is it?
not to pour more cold water on the party, but another thing to just consider in all of this, in terms of the push-pull factors, when we talk about like allocating money towards the issue of climate change, the green stuff highlighted there is the opportunities to reduce GHG emissions, which for the purpose of modeling, like for the task at hand, that's appropriate, and that's why they did it in that way.
Mhm.
There's another big category of adaptation, which is like creating cooling centers and all of the different things we need to do to deal with a warming planet.
Yep.
And I think in terms of like a moral necessity to act, there's stuff that we definitely need to do as a municipality to just meet the need, especially, you know, there's a lot of people here that can't afford things that people in the city might have easier access to in terms of air conditioning and access to cool areas. And, you know, I'm also thinking of a lot of young people that are going to be out in crazy heat. And we just, the money that we spend on the GHG emissions is money that we're not spending on those types of adaptations. And like, I think like, you know, we should be thinking about the renovations to the arena in that context of, in terms of like creating cool spaces where people can retreat to and like shelter from storms and heat and whatnot. And they're like, in terms of trying to sell a number to this population, in terms of how much money are we going to spend on climate change, I think a significant amount of that in the pie chart should go towards the adaptation over the reductions. Not because the reductions aren't super important, like I believe they are more than anyone, I think, but no, I shouldn't say that. I sincerely believe that they're very, very important. But I think, like you guys were saying, in terms of system changes and our capacity to actually make a difference, we can only take a tiny chip out of the GHG thing, but we can make a huge difference for the residents here in terms of how well we help them adapt to these changes. And so,
No, you too bad you weren't here last week. We had a really good presentation from Public Health on just the issues you're talking about. Who are the populations going to be most impacted, and how do we mitigate and make it fair to that group of people?
And just to add, and I'm not just flogging my concierge program, but in that program we address how do homeowners deal with adaptation? How do they create better environments to avoid forest fire, to deal with smoke, to deal with drought, to deal with flood, you know, all of those issues that come up. So, you know, we're doing it, right? We are doing it. We just need to get the word out there and get more people engaged in the
I
process.
should know this. Is it mandated that we have a climate action plan, or we just voluntarily put our hand up and the county did?
Voluntarily,
This is voluntary.
but it enables you to apply for funding that is not otherwise available.
Because change didn't come in the asset management plan until it became
Mandatory.
legislated.
Right.
And Jane, we've got a number of others. The Ontario Disabilities and Accessibilities Act.
AODA?
That didn't,
Yeah.
It's the
they're
funding.
doing it because until they legislated it, it wasn't going to happen.
It's the funding.
yeah.
Because you cannot apply for that Green Municipal Fund without having.
A plan.
We're leaving a lot of money
There's
on the
big
table by
money.
not having
Yeah.
one. So like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like
Adaptation money. too.
yes, because this isn't like legally, like every aspect of this is completely at our discretion. They have a system that they like, but like, for instance, our consultants went and completely tweaked the system, the way the math was done, because they did know better and they made a good case and they adjusted things and like, but that's all completely allowable. And I'm pretty confident if we were to say like, we want our start date to be when council approves this, they would say, have at it, guys. Like, I think that is, you guys can just decide that. And
Would you like the dates adjusted? Not to change when we're starting or ending, but to say that 2026 is here, 2030 is here, that kind of thing.
like make a 5-day
5-year.
time horizon and a 10-year time horizon starting when council passes it. So this is a 10-year plan,
Well,
not a
no,
5-year
It
plan.
actually has to be in effect a year or two before so that you have full data, right?
Again, like that's the way the system is modeled, and I get that, but for our purposes, we've already spent money on this. I don't think we should remodel everything. We have what is reasonably close to a good number. That's probably not going to get a whole lot better. We could just say, starting when council passes this, that's day one, set a 5-year goal and a 10-year goal. And I think that would be completely like respectable in terms of the math. And it would give us at least 10 years to work on this, right?
There is something to be said though, when you go to market this to the population or the council to say, we've been on this track and just say, here's where we were. But there is something to be said, because there's people that are quite afraid or that nothing's been done. There has been work done. We are making progress. So yeah, that's a story though. That's
Okay, I see what you're saying.
but not for technical reasons. I think we talked about this right at the beginning. What's their start date?
Right.
And
Well, the 2030 is really your 5-year plan. If you want to put in a 2035 and a 2050, that's not an issue either, right? It's more a matter if you have different milestones along the way, so we're limited to.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just the compliance with the FCM PCP process, right? Is that it be a 10-year plan from your baseline. So 2021 is the baseline, so 10 years out is 2031. But no, we can do a plan for 2035.
So would you want additional milestone just for discussion purposes?
Well, if we just move our baseline number to 2025, and so our halfway point is 2030 and our final destination is 2035, we're complying with the system. We're just making, because like, yes, the original data was collected in 2019, but we have a business as usual model getting like right in this chart, we have a, what have we modeled the GHG emissions to be today? And that's like decently close. Like, you know, I don't know. I think it would be mathematically completely fine to say our baseline, we're starting our baseline at where we think we are right now.
We could do that, yes, but it took you a year to collect the data for the baseline.
Yeah, because they're looking at all the receipts and everything, yes.
So I'm not prepared to take more time to wait.
I'm not suggesting we do. Sorry, to be clear, I'm suggesting we use the data we have right now.
To change the baseline means collecting the data
No.
for that year.
No, what I'm saying is we
It
shouldn't
does.
need to do that. We have the data and we've modeled its growth. I'm saying it would be acceptable to simply take what we projected based on the business as usual growth from 2019 when we started to where we are today, 2025, because in our model, we have what we think we are, where we think we are right now. It's just based on those receipts. So let's make that our baseline, where we are today, and then make a 5-year and a 10-year time horizon from that. I agree with you. I don't want to push this back another year. I don't want to spend more time and money collecting receipts. Like we did that. We did a model that's decent. Like it's all of these numbers are best guess estimates and as soon as you understand the conversion to CO2e, you understand it's like, these are very rough guesses. And so I think it is totally fine to just take a number that we read.
a little bit more than best guesses. They went through the receipts and saw what we're actually spending.
I know. I'm just saying, like in terms of like once that gets converted from actual greenhouse gases like CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide to CO2e, which is a fictional concept, we do a conversion where like nitrous oxide is 125 to 1 ratio, like methane is 26. But they also have different life expectancies in the atmosphere. Like when CO2 gets released, half of it comes down in less than 20 years, but like roughly 20% of it is there for 1,000 years. And so these models are like, it's not that they're not super important, and we do get very granular on the collection of the receipts, but the actual numbers that come out at the end are vague guesses at best, and it's okay to treat them as such and not get overly detail oriented on the modeling front.
So what's the advantage of switching our start date to current year versus?
Because then we don't have to do this 2050 thing. All we actually have to do is set a goal for 5 years and 10 years. And
We could do that with we could still do that with our target of
Yes.
2021.
Yes.
We could say-
but I like our interim goal becomes next year, right? And then our final goal becomes
You move it
in
to
5 years.
2030, because you just said the rules are fairly flexible.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If we extend it like that, and to extend it, she was saying to comply with the thing, you need to, you've got your baseline, your 5-year mark, and your 10-year mark. So if we were to extend it to, so we have 10 years of runway, the baseline would be starting the year it passes council.
Lots of municipalities have done new iterations of on their plans. They have done full new plans. No, all of that's available. I'm just saying, let's not move the baseline because it will take us additional time. And I don't want to delay getting into actually implementation. Because that, we don't have the time right now.
And if we want to say, we want to set 2030 and 2031, maybe
Yep,
fair, and 2036.
yep, that's fine.
But I also don't think we should get away from the long-term 2050. That
You can state that. That's
Yeah.
fine.
yeah.
I just don't want it to be. It's often presented as sort of the out, like, well, if we can't do it now, then we'll get it done by 2050. Well, sorry, no.
And we hope technology is in place to make it easy and free.
And yeah, and that the world hasn't collapsed in between.
So just to finish off on, that sounds like a compromise that we set our 5-year plan from 2026 to 2031 and 31 to 36.
Sure.
Keep our original baseline. If you got that, Marie?
So 5-year plan goes to 2031, 10 to 2036, and we're keeping our 2050.
Upon approval of council, so we're assuming that will be in.
Sorry, so
Do we have
2030?
targets?
Yeah, so she's right. That's that means that the homework assignment for the consultant / us is to set a target for that 5-year mark and that 10-year mark. Now that we're moving those.
So did you say 2031 or 2030?
2031, 2036, and 2050, upon
But
approval
we're
by the
really
council.
starting it in 2026, the first year of our plan implementation.
2031, 2036, and 2050 it's a long-term kind of. So you want the consultants to revise the emission targets to fit within those milestones. Okay. And the baseline is not
And
changing.
Sorry,
Repeat that. I got confused.
sorry. And to produce targets and target options?
That's what Sue is.
Yes, target reduction.
So the baseline for 2021 will not change, but the 20 to 30.
Sorry, but do we want them to give us a target, or I think we determine?
Sorry, I am quite accustomed to Greenscale presenting options for target reductions. A low, a medium, a high, basically, right? Low, medium, assertive. And so I would be looking to them to do that, because right now we don't have a number to put into a target, right? And so based on their report, they should be able to produce those options. I mean, we can come up with something arbitrary right now, for sure. Right.
It's something council's used to looking at. We get usually 3 options from consultants or from
Yes.
staff, or it's
Exactly.
just something we're accustomed to.
And generally, not always, but generally those are anchored to prices, like a low, medium, high. High would be that money is no object scenario. Low would be like what we're doing now or less than that, and medium something, I think in one of these things that Greenscale did, they showed what other municipalities had achieved as a benchmark for what is doable. And I think that's somewhat helpful, except for if they're a lot more, I think that's not a bad place to start, but if it's a more affluent, it comes down to how much money they have, bottom line. And if you just don't have a lot of money to spend on this stuff, your capacity to show a GHG reduction is muted. It just is.
And in this report to council, October, November, would it also have the offset that we talked about, those strategies to the trees and the?
Would make sense that the report would come
I think
accompany.
that's there, Peter, in as much as possible in that
I wish this had a
natural heritage.
index or something.
Oh, Well, I'll discuss with the consultants to make it a lot more readable. It is a bit of a long document. So just to recap, the baseline is still 2021, but we're looking at 2031, 2036, and potentially 2050. Okay. And you want options and an emission reduction target.
And the 2050 number, that's not requested of
That's
us.
not PCP. That would just allows us, as Sue said, more runway for potential things in the future.
And I think, I don't know if there's a consensus, but there's at least several people here that don't like the 2050 and think it shouldn't be there.
Well, it's like if they want to have it in there, I don't care, but you know,
Who's
it's
they?
not one.
Consultants.
Yeah, if they sort of
The
automatically.
consultants are doing that because for our benefit, I think.
Yes, because it's more in line with federal targets. That's sort of why this whole
Yeah.
thing started. So that's why the 30% was proposed. So for our,
We could say, here's 2050 is a federal target. At this point, it's too far out for us to just comment why, just mention it, but we don't have to have.
Like our job is to get those two dates, the 5-year mark and the 10-year mark. And I think if we keep it rooted in that, then it can be data driven and like, yeah, I think the 2050 thing gets very confusing and it puts a lot of people off.
okay.
Sorry, I can't remember, Richard, if in the previous report, did they do pie charts that showed, like, for example, the breakout of the GHGs from certain sectors?
I can bring a copy if that makes it easy.
I think or that was stuff we had up on the wall. for
Yeah,
the-
yes. So that data hadn't changed. Yeah, so no.
So somewhere we have those as pie charts, which were
Are they easier to read as pie charts?
instead of just being in the text, right?
Yeah, that's fair. What I could do is I could probably circulate all that later on this afternoon so you guys can have some things to compare when you're doing another read through of this report.
That'd be helpful.
So just another point of clarification, we've decided to do this in terms of two separate things, the corporate and community numbers.
Based on PCP, that's the broke it out that way.
Yeah, they have an option for both, but and with that, does that mean we need 4 numbers?
No. So we have an opportunity. So the emission reduction for the midterm and end term, they can either be the same for both plans or they can be separate.
So we have an option of picking 4 numbers, or it can be 2 numbers. But if it's 2 numbers, as we are currently modeling it, we are then we are not just looking at one or the other. We are looking at both. Like we combine them on the back.
Yes, everything the
on
plans
output.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
That's right. That was just a clarification.
Oh, well, yeah, I think in some of our discussions, we've talked about it as if what we're doing is mostly focused on the corporate because the corporate is the one that we have the most control over.
Right.
But in terms of ROI, the number that we're trying to shrink is the net combination of both of them. And the corporate is about 6% of the community. So it's like
2%.
how much?
2%.
2%. So
Yeah.
it's like it's barely anything compared.
Yeah.
So like when we talk about spending all this money on the corporate,
No.
it's
I
nothing.
know.
It's like
But
I know.
the corporate could facilitate the community and we could spend the money there and get, as Sue said, just paying for the audits.
Yeah.
Just that alone accelerates.
So how I see this happening is that a lot of the community-wide goals would be supported by the corporate side, essentially. So if we're doing, for example, a tree giveaway, there would have to be someone on staff to make sure that program exists. So we'd be running it that way. So that's sort of the link there. So although, we may not be affecting a lot because we only have 2% of the whole, we're making sure a lot of what happens on the community side actually does happen. So there's the benefit there.
I hear you, and it's not that the benefit is zero, and there's definitely cross-pollination in
Right.
terms of if you're looking at we have this much money to spend on this problem, and we're trying to get the max ROI. The act of spending like millions of dollars fixing up a few buildings that actually represent the return on it compared to if we
Totally.
took that same money and spent it planting trees or doing some of that, you know what I mean? That's where just scoring it becomes so important because it's a lot of the time when we do, not we, the town, we, the country do climate change things,
Right?
it's not a data driven exercise. It's optics. It's like, government officials want to show off that their buildings are green, and so that to spend all of the money on that, whereas there's much bigger opportunities that go unfunded, and it's just that I think even if we can't have an impressive reduction in GHG emissions, we do our best. But even if the reality is that we're only able to go so far with it, if we could at least model being responsible and thoughtful about how we do what we can do, and do a good job of at least making sure that our elderly population stays cool and that we're somewhat responsible about this, I think that is also a great thing to demonstrate and show as possible, and role model for future attempts at this. I think there's merit in just trying to be smart about this. I think.
I'm sorry. It goes far beyond that. Far beyond that. It goes into getting it into the system here in the municipality so that all the communications has to do with climate, so that everything that gets pushed out into the community has to do with climate, so that the email list that we're building becomes a huge list, and we get stuff regularly out to the populace in Smiths Falls that tells them how to take action. It's far beyond that. Far beyond that. So there is the capacity of the municipality to influence the decisions and actions taken by the community is huge, huge. And we just need to get integrating all of this. That's what it comes down to, right? It comes down to some communications, comes down to taking advantage, Sean, of your, Facebook post, of the other communications, to everything that the town is doing.
I think the easier we can make it,
Yes.
the higher the
Yeah.
probability of success, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the point of just paying for an energy audit gets the first step,
Yeah.
and it gives them that knowledge of knowing that if I do A, B, and C, and I can get funding that's going to cover A, B, and C.
Yep.
Why wouldn't I do this, right? But making that first step
Yep.
doesn't happen without help
Nope.
in many cases.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's the concierge program.
Yeah, yeah. And so in here, for example, with the green stuff being the actions that, directly reduce GHGs, that's true. But the other stuff that's really important in here and that isn't green is the stuff about communications, right? Is the stuff about the municipality actually having methods for communicating with its populace, with the small business group, with the equity group, with all those groups about all these things that are good, and that where the town says we're putting our stamp of approval on this because we want to be a low carbon community, because it's critical for us, because it has to do with protecting us from the ravages of climate. I mean, my Lord, I have no idea at this point, truthfully, what the prospects of Smiths Falls getting flooded are, but I don't think they're minimal, right? I know that generally the management of the Rideau system is such that the communities downstream, Kentville and Ottawa, are the ones that get hit right now. But who knows, right? In the future, what that's going to be. Because we're seeing floods happening everywhere where people were not expecting them. So what's the chances here? We should know that, right? But it's something that we need to be talking about. All this stuff.
We should also know how much excess capacity there is in our electrical grid serving the town today as well.
Are we looking at emergency preparedness, or are we just looking more at robust climate adaptations?
It's a combination.
Wow, that's both.
And I've been dealing with that recently with a number of municipalities. And the emergency planners have not been dealing with the climate issue up until just recently. And it's perverse that they haven't. So we have to make that happen. Electrical grid, I just got information recently. I had no idea how short we were here. Constraints on developments. Because there's not enough electricity in this
Okay.
area.
So maybe that's some homework for Richard to connect with Hydro One to see where electrical services are coming into our community. I assume it's from Eric Hutchinson Road, where the big transmission station is, but how much extra capacity do we have today? And if it's very low, And we have plans for future subdivisions and residential development, potentially industrial development. Plus, we want to, over time, maybe 5% a year of our homes and our buildings are converted. If every year 5% of our citizens convert from ICE vehicles to electrical EVs. So over time, so I mean, if we're going to convert it all over the next 20, 30, 40 years, how do we ensure we have the grid capacity?
15 years, actually. The whole auto fleet turns over in 15 years.
Okay.
So we're looking at 15-year.
So how do we ensure Hydro One, which is planning long term, understands so where we're headed and can support that? Otherwise, everything we're doing is for naught.
Yep.
If there's no excess capacity in the grid, and it's not, Hydro One has no plan in the future to make any enhancements to that.
Well, this is the reason that we did the Electrify Lanark forum now 2 years ago. Okay? And we could not get anybody from Hydro One to come and speak. They were just mum on everything. We couldn't get anybody from the IESO to come and speak. Same
I
thing.
think, aren't they doing these programs?
We had, though, a number of people come and explain what we could have. But this information is new that I have, that we are seriously constrained. Now, that goes to the need for us, frankly, to have more BESS, right? The big batteries.
Battery
Is
energy
there
systems.
capacity for Smith Falls to have a BESS or two? Or
I've
three
seen
or four?
I've seen those in more rural areas. I don't know if there's like a criteria. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I mean, these
We
are
did have
these
a
are
conversation
huge.
with Hydro One recently about moving that transformer station. And they said that according to their analysis, there's no, current grid can accommodate 10 years easily. So there's no plans to upgrade. Now that's their analysis. And they said, please tell us if you've got plans for something. But we can accommodate normal growth for 10 years.
And when was that meeting, Peter?
Last year.
Okay, I would ask you to have another meeting.
So wait, do I follow up, or are you asking Peter McKenna?
Well, it's just something.
I think
Carl
everybody.
has a relationship with them.
Sorry, Pearl.
Carl.
Oh, Carl. Yeah. Okay, I can
You're
talk to
Carl.
him.
Nate, is that what joking?
So I love your enthusiasm on the subject, and I share your drive to try to encourage people to make positive choices. I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying, because I love how passionate you are about this, and I want you to keep banging that drum. I think it's very important. But I just so I make my position on this clear. You are coming from a perspective of somebody who's very well informed, extraordinarily well informed on the subject, and you see it very clearly. You're living it every day, and it's important to understand that a significant chunk of the population not only isn't there, but they're so far on the other side of that they think that it's borderline a cult or a trick, and there is a whole political stripe that has been taught that and so many people are in kind of retreat to their political corners and don't do like a deep, thoughtful research on that subject. And so it's just important to to people who are already a little bit interested in climate change, hearing about how they can do better is this positive. Thanks, I'm glad. For everyone who thinks that they're being tricked and manipulated and spun, getting bombarded with that can have a reverse effect that it doesn't always see the same return. I used to be much more of a spokesperson for it, and I've started to kind of switch gears to trying to listen and hear people out who aren't fully on board. And one of the things I've heard that I frankly can't argue with is that the people on our side that are pushing for climate change mitigation and serious change are fudging the numbers, and we're playing a shell game to make it look like we're able to do way more than we actually are. And we are willing to completely blow tax dollars without any actual prospect of addressing the problem. And that hurts, and it's not a fun criticism to take, but the act of going through this exercise kind of proves that there's a kernel of truth to that at the very least, that they're like the way that this gets calculated and what we decide to acknowledge as emissions and decide not to acknowledge, and like the idea that we're going to suggest that the town commit to a climate change goal that none of us think is actual, or I don't think any of us think is actually achievable, is the type of thing that makes people not like environmentalists. And there is value in trying to win over some of the people that are skeptical of this type of effort by doing something that is totally data driven and then actually achieving the goal that you set out. So it doesn't look like we're just greenwashing. We're actually setting an achievable goal, I think is something to be valued. Anyway, I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah,
We still don't have any numbers to talk about yet, but anyway.
Well, I will be.
Hopefully we'll get those later.
I will. Definitely before the week is out, we'll have some more information on that. What I will do is I'll reach out to the consultant and I'll touch base with him and I'll get you a timeline to when to expect things back. Hopefully before the end of the month is out. I don't think this revision would be catastrophic for him. So I hopefully clarify some things and maybe there'd be more progress next meeting.
So good discussion. You've got your next steps. You just outlined them. And we're going to meet, I think it says October 21st.
That's the next CPWG meeting. If we feel that we have to meet earlier in advance to discuss our emission reduction goals, then I'm
I
available.
think so.
Sure. Maybe when the reports are revised, you want to meet back then?
Yes.
How's that? So hopefully by the for the month is out. Right now, what we're the 16th, so maybe by next week we'll
For
have something.
Thanksgiving.
Well, of course.
I suspect that Green Scout should be able to,
I don't think
Generate.
it's challenging.
yeah, no, they probably have them in their computer. They just haven't.
I have to just ask for it.
Yeah.
I gotta run.
Okay. And Marie,
Thanks, everyone.
you'll also add the September 9th minute approval to the next.
I will, yes, I've recorded that they're deferred until the next meeting.
What else did you need?
I was just curious if it's built into the contract, or if it would be helpful to have Green Scout participate here.
That's a good point. We
I
haven't.
would love to hear that. It would have been good today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Well, once we
haven't
get the
discussed
numbers-
Those answers that you get to the questions that you're gonna pose to them with some of the changes, maybe they could present
Yep.
at the next subcommittee meeting.
I know there's like virtual participation available, so maybe we can ask him to do that. We'll
If it's
see.
within the scope.
I think he wouldn't mind, but we may just have to pay for it, obviously.
Mhm.
So I can discuss him presenting, I guess, the revised version of the report at some meeting, and maybe you guys can chat with him then.
Work with his
And
team.
then get
So
the
we get
numbers
5
first, the targets, before we meet with them.
Right, so you get the revised target numbers. Okay, I'll discuss it and I'll let you know when and if he's available to come discuss. And I think it'd be probably virtual, so you'd probably be speaking through one of these screens. But that's probably okay.
Motion to adjourn. Then.
Okay.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Nate and Sue?
Carried.
Well, thanks for your patience on this, honestly.
Sean was still here. when you did that.
See you, Nate, and thanks for your patience on this.
All right.
See you. I'll just let Tech know we're done.